You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Christopher Media, let's make some noise.
What number are we thinking of? 69, dudes!
Well, it's 1969, okay. Walk across the USA. It's another year for me and you. Another year with nothing to do. It's another year for me and you. Another year with nothing to do.
Fuego, fire, the white-hot heat of a woman possessed of an uncontrollable, unnatural passion, so all-consuming as to make the flames of hell mere glowing embers. Fuego, the insatiable, depraved hunger of a woman shorn of her mask of fidelity and respectability, and bared for what she really is, a crazed female animal on the prowl, a dehumanized creature grasping and clawing for instant gratification from any source and any sex. Fuego, a woman beyond help. The help of physicians or a husband's unswerving love, fighting frenetically to suppress the ravaging torments of a disease that drives her wantonly to perversion, madness, and self-destruction. Fuego is a story of a man as well. A distraught husband tortured by forces and events too overwhelming to cope with, living a nightmare with only tenderness, understanding, and devotion to guide him out of a maze from which there can be no escape, willing to sacrifice his own self-respect, if only to insulate her and share in her ordeal. Fuego is a film the likes of which you have never seen before, because it is the authentic story of a real person told with integrity and stark candor. It is as shocking as only real life can be, without contrivance or false reserve. It is, in fact, so bold and frank that it was banned in the very country where it was made, and its producer-director forced to flee in exile for having merely been the objective reporter of a case history heretofore only whispered in hushed tones. Fuego, starring Isabel Sarli, the voluptuous goddess of the South American screen, and Armando, Argentina's leading producer-director. Suggested for mature adult audiences only. Fuego, a Haven International Pictures release.
Welcome to the projection booth. I'm your host, Mike White. Joining me once again is Ms. Heather Drain.
Hello, hello.
And back in the booth is Mr. Rod Lott.
Fuego.
Our exploration of 1969 continues this week as we head from Europe to Argentina to check out Armando Bo's Fuego. It's the story of Laura, who is played by the one and only Isabel Sarli. She's a woman driven by her passions. After she marries Carlos, played by Bo, she realizes what a hopeless nymphomaniac she is. The two work together to try to find a cure for her. We will be spoiling Fuego, so if you haven't seen it before, you have been warned. It's fairly easy to get, just FYI. I think you can find it over on YouTube, and you definitely find a dubbed version on archive.org. Heather, when was the first time you saw Fuego, and what did you think?
I will say the first time I think Fuego ever came into my sort of sphere of like realization and awareness was I believe reading a mention about it in the Incredibly Strange film book that Research put out years ago, which is an absolute cult film Bible. If anybody listening to this doesn't have it already, go grab it. because it's essential. And then, of course, reading like interviews with John Waters, who's a big fan of this film and a big champion in general of director Armando Bo and his films with Isabel Sarli. You putting this episode on the list, though, was finally the kick in the butt. I needed to go actually see it. Like, it's one I've wanted to see for years, but just, there's 11 other movies that are always, like needing your attention. Oh my God. I was not disappointed. Like, after having years upon years of hype for this film, it's everything I thought it would be, and actually more. Like, there's actually some kind of cool swerves, especially for those of us who already kind of know and love this exploitation genre. There's some twists in this movie that you won't really see in a lot of other films, which I definitely loved.
How about you, Rod?
Well, I also read Incredibly Strange Films, of course. I don't remember it being mentioned in there, but that's like 25 years ago. The first time I would say I recognized it, if you remember in 2003 when Borders sold or gave away the Extra Weird sampler from Something Weird DVD. Like if you go and buy a Something Weird DVD from their store, you got the sampler disc. And at the time, it was not available commercially. So I went and got it, watched that thing start to finish one night, and the trailer for Fuego was on there. And I hope in this day and age, it's okay to say, like, she is my type. So the very next day, I went back to Borders and bought Fuego and got another free sampler disc, which I eBayed for an obscene amount of money, which is sad since you can buy the thing now on Amazon for like $3 or $4. But that was the first time, and so 2003, and I've watched it probably 3 or 4 times since.
I also read the Incredibly Strange Movies book, and I don't remember this one specifically either. I definitely remember the exact first time that I saw it, which was in 2002 at the Maryland Film Festival when John Waters actually presented this. He does or at least he used to, I'm not sure if he still does, but he would pick out a movie every year, and I think it was the Saturday night screening, would do like an introduction, would show the movie, and do a Q&A afterwards, and it was always a real treat. I remember seeing Baxter there, Sleeping Dogs Lie, the Bobcat Goldthwait film, Porno Theater, which is also called The Cat with Two Heads. So it was always something great when he would show these movies. And my God, Fuego did not disappoint. And seeing Fuego with a packed audience, because he always packs them in, my goodness, was this a lot of fun. We just had a blast watching this movie. And I had never really experienced Isabel Sarli or Armando Bo before, but boy, oh boy, did it make me hungry for more.
It's also discussed at length in Bill Landis and Michelle Clifford's Sleazoid Express book, which I recently reread. So talk absolutely about the audience response to this too. So that fits right in with your experience.
I am very surprised that there aren't more of these Armando Bo films out there available for us to watch, especially because it sounds like a few of them were released here in the United States. Definitely Fuego was, but it sounds like a couple others were dubbed and released, and I'm having the worst time trying to find those. It is just remarkable how rare these things are, and especially with English subtitles, it's just almost impossible.
The only one I've seen for sale is Naked Temptation, which Something Weird also has. And I'm kind of surprised that wasn't the second feature on the disc with Fuego, because the one that is not directed by Armando Bo, 70 times 7, doesn't even feature her nude. So why watch it? It's a boring movie. It's a really boring movie.
You are canceled, Rod.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
Reading about like Argentinian cinema in general, because Argentina's had like this thriving film community since the silent film era. Like they were like one of the absolute first Latin American countries to kind of jump into film and make their own films. I don't know how much awareness has ever really been in the state. America's already kind of like, we're sort of historically like an isolationist country in a lot of ways anyways, but like I didn't even really think about Argentinian cinema until years ago seeing, which thanks to Something Weird Video, which everybody should love and have a little shrine and altar to them in their house, the release of Feast of Flesh, which was Emilio Vieira's film, which was originally titled Placer Sangriento, and that film's brilliant. That was made, I think, just like 2 or 3 years before Fuego, and now I want to comb all of my film books because I feel like I know for sure I've read about Fuego in one of them, but now you guys have me doubting if it was in Research's book. So I'll be doing that after this recording.
I can tell you, Heather, it is in there because I did run across it as I was doing my research for stuff. So I grabbed a copy and threw it into Dropbox for us all to revisit. But I think that was like yesterday. So it was a little late in the game.
This film should be in even more film books, though, because it's great. But it's so weird that, you know, for a country that had such a big film industry and such a notable one, that only just seems like little kind of bursts of certain titles that, you know, have kind of made it and remained in our consciousness. That seems like a real shame, really.
Well, I know, too, they were under pretty heavy censorship. I mean, 1, it was a much more of a Catholic country. 2, there was the Perón dictatorship that was going on, so you couldn't really be too open about things.
I'll tell you what's new, Buenos Aires.
This was definitely post Eva Perón, and I think Juan might have been dead by this point. I'm not sure. Yeah, especially this film was really pushing boundaries, but it was, 58 when Bo and Sarli got together and they had the first nude scene in an Argentinian film, and it just caused such a scandal.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if either of you watched the documentary, Carne Sobre Carne, but they go into detail heavily about the censorship and the time, and most of the clips in the movie are taken from those scenes that didn't make it into the films.
There's also a whole thing of what's legend and what's true. Like, I was reading a book about Argentinian cinema, or sorry, I should say Latino cinema, and they were talking specifically about the Bo and Sarli films, and they were saying this whole idea of Isabel Sarli saying, "Oh, my first nude scene, they shot it with a long lens. I had no idea that they could see me that far." And the author was like, "Well, actually, there are intercuts of close-ups, so it's not really true what she's saying. There were definitely multiple camera setups, so you just have to take a lot of stuff that they say with a grain of salt."
I can't believe a celebrity would lie.
Never happens. We were just talking about Kevin Spacey before you got on the phone, so that we know that never happens.
I love reading interviews though with Sarli where she talks about just her mother was like crying about the nude scene, and her, you know, you can kind of understand maybe why she had to fib a little bit, because it's just, you know, her poor, probably very incredibly religious mother being like, my little girl's naked in this film.
And hitting her with boots.
Yeah, beating her with these, wasn't it riding boots? Oh my goodness. The sacrifices artists make for us, the viewers. We're very lucky.
It sounds like a scene out of Fuego.
Yes, it does.
It could be in this movie.
This film, before we go into any actual details, the theme song alone makes this, I think, a film worth seeking out. The music's amazing.
Oh, God, yes.
Yes. It's an earworm.
I just kept looking for, if not the original songs, for somebody to have covered this stuff. I can't see somebody not covering this, especially somebody like, you know, like an organ player. The organ music in this movie is incredible.
It's so good. I tried to do like a little bit of a research because I was thinking because the music's so good. In fact, in my notes, I have it as described as Martin Denny's erotic fantasies. Because that's what it made me, and that's perfect because Sarli, she looks like, for anybody familiar with Martin Denny, like his covers would always have these just ridiculously gorgeous, kind of buxotic.
Oh yeah, she's right out of The Quiet Village.
So I was thinking, like, surely this is like going to dig up like a whole ton of discographies and soundtracks, and the two people credited are as Bo himself, which is pretty cool. And it looks like he worked on a number of his films on the music side. But the organ playing is Humberto, and I'm probably going to butcher his name, Ubriaca, or Brioco. Spanish is not my main language, obviously, but and the only other real credit, he did one more piece of music with Bo on a film, but then he was credited on an album. But he's only I could only find him credited on like one album. Now, granted, how well represented it is Argentinian music from the 60s on Discogs. Who knows, but yeah, I thought I would find a lot more because the music's stellar.
It's very cocktail organ, and it's like wherever that bar is, I want to go there.
Shazam was no help to me with this movie whatsoever. I just kept holding up Shazam, and then I would even put it with my earphones. It was just no matches the whole time, no matches. I'm like, oh, I hate you. It's very sad. This stuff should be much more readily available. And like I said, if not this original stuff, at least cover versions, but I could not find anything. And then too, it's pretty difficult with the name of the main song being Fuego. I mean, that comes up pretty often in Spanish music.
The theme song is so iconic once you've, seen the movie. I'm kind of surprised upon this most recent revisit, I didn't hear it as much in the movie as I remembered. Because afterwards, that sticks in your head for years.
The one credit I could find for Umberto was he appeared on an album by a band called Los Fernandos, on an album called Boleros in Hi-Fi, which is a great title. The internet is reliable some of the time. It would be an absolute gem to have the soundtrack get remastered and officially released. Along to go with the film, because the film's it is easy to find, but it is out of print. I know Something Weird had that double feature with it on Image Entertainment, but I think that's out of print.
As of today, it is available to buy new on hamiltonbook.com for $5.95 or 99 cents. So buy it today if you don't have it.
If it's still in print, go get it from Something Weird, preferably.
Didn't I read that Something Weird is actually phasing out their physical media?
Yeah, this is the last year that they're going to be doing that, so I need to win the lottery.
The idea of Isabel Sarli kind of embellishing the story and having pretty much the same story to tell every single time she's asked about things. I mean, like celebrities do, we know that. It's very much the case for John Waters as well. The intro that is out there, you can find it on YouTube. Apparently there was a show which seems to run very much along the lines of him introducing things at the Maryland Film Festival, because he talks about Fuego, and then at the end he's like, and next week we're going to look at Baxter. And I was like, oh, okay, so these are just your favorite picks to do. And he's got his little spiel that he gives. That spiel that he gives before the subtitled version of Fuego that's on YouTube is the exact same spiel that he gave at the Maryland Film Festival. So, which is pretty darn funny that he just has we know, he's a stand-up act as much as he is a director, and he just pretty much repeats himself when it comes to different topics.
Yeah, I love the him quoting sort of the film critics of the time. And there was that one writer that was talking about her bum and just how he had questions about the quality of her ass, because you don't really get a good look of it in Fuego. But he was very happy to see her in another film, and her bum was fine.
That was a major concern of the day, I can assure you.
We'll have to find this critic's grave and cancel him.
Game over.
I love the guy who said she makes Raquel Welch look like Twiggy standing backwards.
I have to say, as a film writer, that's the kind of line you kill for. That's so good.
I mean, the comparisons that Waters makes between Armando Bo and Russ Meyer are right there. He is absolutely 100% right. The whole idea of these films being very melodramatic. I mean, these films would cause Douglas Sirk to say, well, maybe that's a little much. The melodrama, the sexuality, the very buxom leading lady, I can really see those comparisons. I mean, taking something like, Beneath the Valley of the Ultra Vixens and watching that as a double feature with an Armando Bo film. Yeah, I can totally see that would be one hell of a night.
I mean, I do get the Russ Meyer comparison totally, but I thought more about John Derek, because John Derek putting his wife, Bo Derek, in front of cameras and being like, look how hot my wife is. That's what Armando Bo is doing, even though they were never married. That's exactly what he's doing. Look how hot she is. You can't have her. I can, but I'm going to drive you crazy.
Oh boy, I would say Armando Bo's a better director, just judging from Fuego. Derek's superpower, I think, was netting ridiculously beautiful women. Filmmaking, but I think that's actually a cool comparison. It's funny because when you read up on Bo, you do see the Russ Meyer thing brought up a lot, and like you, Mike, I could see it though. I would say a huge key difference is that obviously Meyer, not just because he was born in America, Meyer's voice, like his thumbprint is 100% jocular, baseball playing, American pie eating American. Like, he is super American, but also there's no Catholic guilt in his films. I would say that would be the different, and that's kind of actually something I thought was interesting about Fuego, as we'll get into, because Meyer's women, especially as he went on, are all they're not really, there's not a lot of shame with the libido with a lot of the Meyer women. They're Amazons. They are just ferocious. I always thought he's a great feminist director personally, but I know a lot of feminists I'm probably canceled now saying that, but that's fine.
Game over.
I'll take it, because I love Russ Meyer. But I love this too. It would have been kind of cool to have a crossover with Sarli in a Meyer film. But one thing that's really captivating about the Bo Sarli story is that, they were never married, but she was pretty much faithful to him till he died, and rarely ever worked with other directors because of that. Like, she was that loyal to Bo, even though he never divorced his wife. Though with Meyer, I've noticed the film that of his that gets compared the most to Fuego is Vixen, which Vixen's awesome. That would be another double bill I would love to see. Though, again, like, the lead Vixen, she's, I think, a lot less apologetic.
She comes from a place where she wants to destroy people, I think.
Oh, yeah. And she makes out with a fish. I mean, yeah. As crazy as Fuego gets, you can't really beat the fish tarantella from Vixen. And plus, there's no racist subplot either. Vixen's nuts. God bless Russ Meyer, but God bless Armando Bo. Like, we got to get into the meat of this movie.
Get on with it.
Poor Lara has a problem that she is a nymphomaniac, but it seems like she is maybe kind of quelling her desires a little bit because she's got herself set up in a house with a housekeeper, who is Andrea. And Andrea's this older lady who just absolutely loves Lara. And I kept getting a real Mrs. Danvers vibe from her. I kept thinking of Rebecca and Rebecca's underwear. And I can see like Andrea taking around like the new Mrs. Danvers and being like, and these are Laura's under things, But they've got a pretty good...
I got a kind of Laurie Metcalf vibe off.
Yeah, I can see Laurie Metcalf there.
Yeah, Laurie, but just in looks, and that's all. Not anything else.
See, I love that I think all three of us got a different vibe. I kind of got a Grayson Hall vibe off of her. Like, I actually quipped to my husband, I was like, this is Grayson Hall's most erotic role. Yeah, for all you Dark Shadows fans out there. I kind of love this character, though. Andrea is this, she's an out lesbian, which is something, you saw a little bit of in film in the 60s, but usually not very favorably.
Well, and I don't think that she gets favorably treated. There's all this talk about perversion and that it's really looked down upon, though she seems happy. Laura seems pretty happy, though Laura really seems to want a man. She seems very conflicted that she is in this lesbian relationship and she wants the meets. The best place for that is with Armando Bo as Carlos, who happens upon these two women one day while he's riding on the beach. We have the whole setup for the movie within the first 5 minutes of this being on screen, not including the credits and the incredible credit music.
And the incredible typeface.
Oh, yes.
Fuego. It looks like the, if you remember the Hot Stuff comic book that Harvey put out, the Richie Rich thing, with the little devil, that's like that typeface to a T.
Is it animated? Am I remembering that correctly?
No, it looks like it is. Well, does it? It definitely looks like it should be, but I can't remember if it moves ever so slightly or not. But if it doesn't, it certainly has the personality that makes you think it does.
The music's animated. it's by proxy. But the thing I thought was cool because, like, in the first few minutes, like, I went into it kind of expecting Laura to be just this sort of just wanton she-devil. And there's elements of that because, you know, we see her getting tailed off by Andrea by the lake, and Carlos is watching. And then, you know, she's like dancing with George, this guy named George at a party, and they're obviously kind of an item a little bit, but he has to go off to a business meeting, and you got those Greek chorus, these two ladies, like a brunette and a blonde, just kind of making commentary.
She uses all of her men like toys. This one today, tomorrow another. She'll find her man one day, poor thing. Oh, Laura? She'll need at least 10.
I mean, on paper, it's catty, but their dynamic just seems to be just kind of like, oh, wow, like, kind of good for her. She's got money.
She wants a man, but yet she cannot be faithful, and says that to Armando Bo over and over. I love you, but I can't marry you because I can never be faithful to you.
And this is that trope that we've talked about in the past, the man who tries to fix the woman. And he tries to do that, but I think at some point he realizes that it's just beyond hope. And he even comes to the conclusion of, you can cheat on me if you want, I'm still going to love you, which is really kind of progressive for 1969.
Incredibly. Yeah, I mean, I kept expecting it to go, and I think like most viewers would, to go like some sort of super dark, and it does get dark, but in a different way, but to go like the way of that like old Kenny Rogers song Lucy, like, you know, or was it Ruby? It's Ruby.
Oh, Ruby, take your love to town. Yeah.
It's like, but yet you keep thinking like it's going to go there, but then it ends up kind of taking a different route, which I thought was cool. And the fact that she ends up actually legitimately falling in love with Carlos, that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, that becomes like her big thing in the film, is that she loves this guy so much, but she just cannot be satisfied with just one man alone. That they get married, they have this wonderful relationship, everything seems to be going peachy keen, and then there's one day where she just can't take it anymore, and she just has to go out and prowl for a man. And this becomes probably one of the best montages that I've ever seen in my life, of Isabel Sarli in this major mink coat walking around in the city and trying to seduce these men by showing her breasts and playing with her breasts. Oh my God, it is so good. I love this.
You're canceled now. And it is definitely the scene of the movie. That's Fuego in a nutshell, is that scene. It's just absolutely kind of startling when you first see it. And, you know, upon revisits, it's kind of hilarious. But in both instances, it's always kind of sexy at the same time.
I love the guy who makes the "you're crazy" or "she's crazy" sign. Like, he doesn't do the loop with his finger around the ear, but he like does this thing with his finger on his temple, and he's just like, what is going on here?
She likes to play with her breasts so much, not only in that scene, but through the whole movie. But it reminds me of a line of Steve Martin's in LA Story, which is not a great movie. But his character says, I could never be a woman because I just stay at home and play with my breasts all day. And that's exactly what she does.
And her breasts are so sensitive. It's like she masturbates by rubbing her breasts. Because almost everything here has to be above the waist. You know, we're okay with above the waist nudity, but there's nothing going on below the waist a lot of times, which is pretty typical for softcore type of things. But it just is so funny that she gets so turned on by having her breasts played with.
I kind of viewed it as like a practical move too, because most of the time when she's doing it, she's covering a good chunk of her boobs, and I probably shouldn't call them boobs, whatever. But like, we'll be canceled together as a group, so it's kind of like a form of, you know, a form and function, but where it's, you know, the sexuality's there, it's in your face, but it's also, there's more implied than anything else. Though I did think it was kind of bold. There is a scene where, you know, when Andrea's telling her off and she's like lower and kissing her hip, and she's like, you know, that's pretty racy. But also I kind of like the fact that, Andrea's kind of almost like, she's a bit older than Laura, and not really like, I wouldn't say she's unattractive, but she's definitely not. And usually in these kind of films, you would expect Andrea to look like, Haji or Turistatiana or somebody like that, going back to the Meyer pool. And she's not like a glamazon. Like, she looks like she looks like a maid. But I kind of like that. And the fact that also all the men in this film, except maybe for Beau, are kind of, they look like just regular dudes in a village. Like, this is, these are all just sort of stout, middle-aged guys. Kind of grubbers, they're kind of grubbertons a little bit.
They all look kind of the same. The one that sticks out the most is during that montage, and that greasy-looking guy that she finds in the woods and has sex with him. He's the only one that sort of stands out in the movie, because everyone else just sort of looks like they are so real, so random looking, that they sort of look alike.
He ended up becoming, or he might have already been, an Armando Beau regular, because he shows up in Bewitched as another person, another guy that she's trying to seduce as well. But we'll talk about that one a little bit later.
I would too. I would show up.
That was the one thing. Did you guys think it was a little unrealistic, though, that she had so few takers?
Oh,
in
yeah,
that
totally.
Montage? This is Isabel Sarli, a former Miss Argentina, former pageant girl who's a total buxotic, showing her goods to you. She's clearly down for some action. And yet, I do actually understand the guy that thought she was crazy, because that man has probably had sex, like, with a crazy woman. That shit always seems hot on paper. I've had a lot of friends, like, when you have sex with the insane, there is a price to pay. The sex is probably not worth it. And he's like, I don't want her to bite off my dick or something like that. I don't know how crazy she is. I don't want my house to get set fire to, like, it's sometimes it's better to play it safe. But the other guys, I'm like, and the guy that she goes to the woods with, he just leaves her?
Yeah, that was so weird.
Sorry, senora. I haven't any cash.
It's not your money that I need. I want you right now. I can't stand it.
I'm being consumed by the sexual fire inside. I need men. I need men.
He reminded me of a young MC Gainey.
I thought you were going to say MC Hammer for a second.
No, he didn't have the pants for MC Hammer.
Please, Hammer, don't hurt him. Also, please don't let me be MC Hammer from the Pumps in a Bump video. Jesus, that's the only thing more pulchritudinous than Isabel Sarli's bosoms would be Hammer in that thong. I can't unsee it. That was another thing, like the whole wood sequence, and with her kind of going off with these random men. Another thing I noticed that made this definitely different than, say, like an American equivalent, like an American sexploitation film, is it never gets rapey. It never, I kept thinking it was going to kind of, especially going off with Strange Men, like, is she going to end up going with a guy that's real violent, or, and it never quite goes there, which I don't mind. It's good not to have things be totally dark sometimes.
But they definitely got dark with her wanting to basically die because she can't control herself. Her urges send her into this depressive state.
Which is really surprising. Like, you would think, okay, yeah, she's going to be happy getting laid all the time. But no, this is a real struggle for her. She just cannot handle how horny she is, and that she wants to be faithful to Carlos. And yeah, it's kind of a nice thing that it's not. It's exploitative, but there are real things that are going on in here. There is this whole, like, I really want to be faithful to my husband, but I can't. And so I really want to kill myself. So she's got that scene when she's on the roof and thinking about throwing herself off, or, when he beats her into submission, it's just like she thinks that she deserves it, which is a terrible thing, but that's her state of mind.
Your hard drive is filthy, right? We got your computer back. I mean, it is dirty.
It's not unlike a drug addict who wants to get clean but cannot get clean. And the film is not trying to be that heavy, but that's not out of line with addiction in real life.
Andrea is almost like an enabler. She's the one who's always there with her at home and playing with her, running a feather over her breast, getting her real turned on. I mean, Andrea's getting something out of this relationship. I thought Laura was as well. So when Carlos comes in, is just like, you're out of here, Andrea. That becomes one of the most heartbreaking scenes of the film for me, is her getting dismissed by Laura. Like, I don't believe you, Carlos. I have to hear it from Laura. And when Laura tells her to leave, I just wanted to cry. I felt so bad for her.
I did too, especially because Andrea seemed to really love her just as she was. Like, I mean, she wasn't always happy about her going out with dudes, but at the same time, like, she kind of remained romantically faithful, you know? I mean, she's there with her sexually too, but she also has moments where I love you and don't get married, and, you know, there's a lot of angst with her. And it's funny because I feel like we don't see Laura have real angst about her condition until she marries Carlos. Like, she kind of almost seems happier in the early part of the film, with just sort of being able to date different guys and be with Andrea. It doesn't seem to get super desperate feeling until she's married. And then, you know, we go from seeing her at the beginning with guys like George, who's like this well-dressed businessman, socialite kind of guy, to like, you know, some greasy dude by a bus that takes her out to the woods, you know? So I don't know. I mean, and the thing I do like about the Andrea character, even though it does things to and sad for her, is it never goes to a point. I feel like, again, if this was an American film, Andrea would have either killed one of them out of a jealous rage. You have like the murdering sort of trope of the murderous homosexual from this era, or she would have killed herself. And instead, we actually get to see her live and go off with her life. You know, I like to think she found a similarly big-breasted Amazon that was down and didn't need a man, just, you know, got some sex toys. Come on.
It really kind of speaks to this idea of like marriage as a trap rather than a blessing, because she just cannot handle being monogamous. And it's just like, okay, well, do you have to be? Is that what's expected of you? I guess in 1969 Argentina, yes, but I think to your point, she would have been much better off had she not said to Carlos, you know, you are the one for me, and just kept playing the field forever.
Well, consider the source. I mean, Armando Bo was married throughout his life, but yet cheated on her his whole life with Isabella. Maybe that is part of, you know, the movie is him expressing that thought that marriage is a trap for him in that way.
And there's this weird reliance on doctors, like having to go to a gynecologist, going to a psychiatrist around Argentina, and then also flying all the way to the United States to see another psychiatrist, only for that psychiatrist to say, the earlier guy was right. Basically, you just wasted an entire trip to the U.S. to find out that the first guy that you talked to was 100% right. There's nothing that any of these people can do for her. And again, that puts her in this state of, oh my God, I'm a terrible person. I should just jump off of this building.
The thing that cracked me up, even, I know it's not funny, but it was funny to me, is that first scene, the first sequence with the Argentinian doctor, where he literally refers to nymphomania as a neurosis in the genitals. Because when I think neurosis, I think like, you know, George Costanza. I think, just being neurotic, and I could just picture just little genitals being just like, oh, I'm not good enough. Very telling that his explanation, nymphomania, only applies to women. And it's only within their most fertile period of time as a woman, of course, like from like 20 to 40. So it's just like, if a man wants to get laid all the time, he's just a dude. And also, of course, like with sort of like gender roles and culture too, it's sort of the other thing where if you have this kind of device where if a woman wants to be a wanton, it has to be a malady, as opposed to just wanting to have a good time. But they do have the angst, and you do feel for her, which I like. Like she's a person. She's not just a hot lady, which she is, but she's also, this woman that's gone through a lot of angst. And, I did love the New York. There's some great, just like some B-roll of her walking the streets of a pre-gentrified 60s era New York City, which I always love seeing.
Oh, that was fantastic.
Totally.
And yeah, to Water's point, I mean, you can almost hear the girl can't help it as she's walking along.
Oh my, I felt so vindicated too listening, because I listened to the intro after the movie, and because the whole time I kept thinking, she's like a hot Dawn Davenport, like the hair and the makeup, and then he pretty much, that was like an inspiration for Divine's makeup in Female Trouble, obviously pre-acid being thrown in the face, but I kept hoping, like, when she got to New York City to have some kind of US versus Argentina sexploitation, like, crossover, like Bruce Lee versus Satan or some shit, but instead of that, it's like, Fuego versus Richard Jennings from the Flesh trilogy by Michael and Roberta Findlay. this is probably only just me. I just thought she's going to get in the car and you're going to hear Michael Finlay just be like, hello, you strange whore, like that. And I'm like, oh my God, yes. I may be the only person on the planet that would want that. But luckily for Laura, her fate isn't that bad because, yeah, Richard Jennings was a very naughty man.
We have to go back and talk about the gynecologist scene. That's pretty incredible. And that kind of, here's some words I've never said before in my life. That reminded me of Deep Throat. And like the seed of the idea of that movie is here, just a touch. But that entire scene takes this movie to another level of bizarreness.
Yeah, when he talks about a neurosis of the genitals, I was surprised that he wasn't like, oh yeah, her clitoris is in her throat. I mean, it's that kind of hackneyed medical speak that I was just like, okay, yeah. I totally agree with you. This does feel like the seeds of Deep Throat have been planted here.
See, I feel like the scene of Deep Throat was a lot easier to swallow. The doctor in Fuego he was very sort of sinister looking to me and very uncomfortable looking. And then he has these yellowy gloves. Those gloves looked horrible. I'm like, I would not want that anywhere near my lady parts. You know, it's definitely, Harry Reams is a huge step up. Plus he's got that cute accent. He's all like, there you are. There it is, you little bugger. Like he's so charming. Like,
yeah, all three of these doctors feel like they're cut from the same cloth. You know, they've all got the glasses. They've all got the same manner. They're all old white guys. It's just like, okay, I think I see a pattern here with the patriarchy.
When he's talking to the American doctor, I thought there'd be like a little cute scene though where, yeah, Carlos leaves and the doctor kind of scoots out of his desk and like, she's under the desk. But that doesn't happen, obviously.
No, instead, he makes the major mistake of, rather than saying, why don't you stay in the hotel room? He says, why don't you go out shopping, walk down Broadway? Perfect time to get picked up by this other old white guy who is just such a sweet talker, you know?
Hey, baby. Hey, you there. Come over here. Come on. I won't bite you. Come on. Don't be afraid. Here, get in. Hey, you are beautiful. What are you doing out here all alone, huh?
I was just looking around.
Want a ride? Come on. Don't stand on ceremony. You seem to be a foreigner. You from out of town?
I'm from South America.
Oh, you're visiting New York. I'll show you the city, okay?
All right.
Okay, let's go.
I loved him. He was such a mook. He's like, I won't hurt you. I won't, come on, baby. Like, he was great. Like, also, that is not a man you ever get near, girl. Oh my God. It's amazing she didn't end up in a dumpster. Also, how dumb is Carlos and naive to be, after he's had all these diagnoses, to let his wife, I hate using that word, but you know what I mean? Like, encourage her to go out by herself in New York City. I'm surprised she didn't end up at Show World, dancing off in a booth or something, but, and then just be like, now try not to give in to temptation. Like, mental illness works that way. In his defense, a lot of people in real life, you know, mean well, but they'll say things to people like, well, just be happy, you know, like that fixes things like depression or being bipolar, so.
But no, instead they go back to Argentina, and they're up on top of one of the many mountains in this film. And I did notice there's a real elemental theme to this movie, because we start with her in water, and we've got a lot of water scenes, a lot of things taking place by water. And then, of course, with the title of the film being Fuego, we get many, many close-ups of fires. Especially, it's a good time when things are happening to just pan that camera over to the fire that's happening and just be like, see? You get it? This is the fire.
And snow.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Yeah. When she gets so hot, she has to cool herself off with snow.
In the Something Weird cut, and this is different from the John Waters version you sent with the host segments, there's a scene in Something Weird that is not in the Waters where Armando Bo proposes marriage, and her response to that is to rub snow all over her chest. And that either it's like just a line or maybe a whole scene is cut from Waters' version. But so that's what she does. She doesn't really answer. Is that a yes? I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I was shocked she ended up getting married to Carlos, because it seemed like their early courtship was him immediately wanting to get serious and her just kind of being coy. Or at times even just telling him, like, I can't be faithful. You know, I mean, that's the thing. She's always honest with him, like, from the beginning, which is kind of why at times I got frustrated, and not with the film's great, but with him as a character, because it's like, well, you can't really get mad at her. She told you how she was, you know, it's not like marriage is gonna, you know, like anything just automatically changes who somebody is. They're still gonna be them and have their pluses and minuses and all that. But that snow scene is amazing. Something that hits me though, do we ever see her and Carlos in bed making out and making love? It always seems like they're like on a snow hill or on a beach or in front of the fire. Like, I think the only people we see her in bed with is Andrea and the electrician, which I love. Oh God, when he's confronting them and that poor schlub is running down and he's like, the men in the village stay away from the
right. Her reputation is known.
I'm like, are these guys not heterosexual? Like, come on, it's Isabel Sarli. I figured it'd be like swarming, like, you know, like Frankenstein's castle or some shit. But instead of torches, they're all carrying condoms. We're like, yeah, you know, gonna go hook up with Isabel Sarli.
If you're a real man, you don't need condoms.
You don't. Oh, gross. Some of those guys needed to be wrapped in a full body condom.
Yeah, I had in my notes that the electrician looked like Vincent Gardenia.
Where's the lie? I mean, I'm surprised. Yeah, if this is American, she would have had a hot sex scene with Vic Tayback. That's kind of the quality. We got male dudes in this universe. They're all male, except for Armando Bow, which I wonder if that's on purpose, where he's like, I'm the director, I'm going to be the hottest dude in this movie.
Oh, yeah. That's part of his unwritten contract.
It was surprising. Like, here's this guy with a hook hand, and he's, you know, he's all these, like, deformed dudes, and then Armando Bo.
Well, I like that he knew his limitations. He's like, I may not be the best actor, but I work for cheap.
I saw that. That's her whole death wish that gets repeated. It's like, I always love it when films, because everybody, I think when people, especially they don't know sexploitation films, just have this, like, just very kind of wrong-headed overview of them. And it's like, no, I mean, a lot of these films in the genre will have kind of surprisingly sort of dark twists. And, you know, a film, you can have like sex and death, eros and death. And we definitely get that a lot here as we get towards the end.
Yeah, there's a scene when they're up on top of the mountain and he's got a gun and it reminded me of Old Yeller. It's like she's got the hydrophobia and he's got to put her down. And it just becomes this really, and it doesn't help that the music, a lot of the music is this organ music. So when it comes up, it is just like, this is a soap opera. And this is one of the most soap opera scenes where they're working out this whole thing. And then surprise, surprise, no, he's like, nope. You know what? I have your heart. I know that I have your heart. You can go see other men. Puts the gun away. All right. They hug it out on top of this mountain. And then she ends up going to church and praying and then putting on a white gown. And I think she just jumps off the mountain, as one does. And then the most surprising thing is that she comes back as a ghost. I had completely forgotten that she comes back as a ghost. And then he ends up killing himself and they are together forever as spirits. And I guess, you know, we have to go back to what we've learned in the movies, which I believe is another John Derek title, that ghosts can't do it.
Oh God, I forgot about that. I think willingly.
Yeah, I always forget about that ending, which is so strange, but it does come from nowhere. So it catches me by surprise every 5 years I watch this or whatever. But it does make me wonder, can she be faithful in the afterlife? I mean, certainly she's got to be, right?
I hope so.
Heaven and all its rules, assuming they go there.
She just suicided and so did he, so they should be going to hell, but with her diaphanous gown and all that, I'm just like, she looks like an angel to me.
Oh man, now I kind of wish there would have been Fuego too, where it's sort of like the devil and Mrs. Jones too. Where Justine's like, she's in hell, and I'm sorry. It's just getting it on. Yeah, it's such a somber ending, but kind of poetic. It's very unusually both twisted and sweet at the same time.
And it ends fast, man. Once he kills himself, it is just, bam, the end. I was like, oh, wow. Okay.
The movie begins quickly and ends quickly. Like their courtship, like you mentioned, is so short. And then they're together, and then, yeah, that ending.
Well, the movie's not that long either, is it? It feels like 70 minutes. It might be longer than that, but it moves very fast.
I think it's about an hour and a half, but yeah, you're right. It does move quickly.
I never feel like anything drags in this.
Maybe her mink coat on the ground, but that's it.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll be back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Let me ask you a question. Are you getting enough? I bet you'd love more, right? Well, AdamandEve.com wants to give you more with 10 free gifts. First, you'll get a sexy surprise for her. Second, a specially selected toy for him. And third, a little something we know you'll both enjoy. Plus, you'll get 6 full-length adult movies on DVD. And number 10, free shipping on your entire order. So what do you have to do to get your 10 free gifts? It's not hard. Just go to AdamandEve.com and select any one item. It could be an adventurous new toy, sexy piece of lingerie, or anything you desire. Just enter offer code BOOTH at checkout, and you'll get all 10 free gifts. Go check out AdamandEve.com today. Select one item and get 10 free gifts, including free shipping, when you enter offer code BOOTH. That's BOOTH at AdamandEve.com.
Hi there, faithful Projection Booth listener, Chris Stashew here. If you're looking for even more deep dive film discussion, both old and new, on and off the cinematic beaten path, check out the Culture Cast. Every episode, I'm joined by a different guest as we traverse the cinema landscape, talking about not only our monthly theme, but also some of the year's biggest films. I'm even joined by the host of the Projection Booth, the one and only Mike White. So if you want to listen to even more conversations on film, head on over to culturecast.com or find it on all podcatchers, both Android and iOS.
I'm Dave Hunt, and I'm one of the co-hosts for Super True Stories, a podcast where two guys suffer through and report back on some of the worst documentaries you can stream for free.
And I'm Axel Cohagen, the other co-host. Film is a beautiful lie that teaches us about who we are on the inside. Dave and I look at the documentaries that are the ugliest of truths, teaching you about mixed martial arts and fishing, poorly faked ghost stories, and everything you wanted to know about poor production values and stock footage.
Check us out on iTunes, Google Play, or at supertruestories.com.
I'm Chris Cooling from Forgotten TV, and you're listening to The Projection Booth, the ultimate movie podcast.
Back and we were talking about Fuego, and I mentioned that this was another 1969 film, and I could have chosen a few films from Armando Bo because he actually put out 3 movies in 1969. I mean, these movies were done very, very quickly, which, I mean, you can kind of tell there's some rough edges with these movies. I was very happy. There is a version of his movie Bewitched from 1969, which is available subtitled. So if people haven't seen Embrujada, I highly recommend it. And it feels like that movie was very influenced by Rosemary's Baby, because the Isabel Sarli character in that one desperately wants a child and will do anything to get a child, and then ends up somehow invoking the devil or a different spirit, but it basically is the devil. So this guy shows up all the time who's got a devil mask and big, you mentioned Vic Tayback earlier, big hairy Vic Tayback back and everything.
They do mention in the documentary that it was a direct response to Rosemary's Baby.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that I was picking up on that. And that's also got this twist of her husband ending up being gay, and so he can't give her the baby that she wants.
Aww.
Yeah. And he is lovers with the guy who ends up having sex with her in the forest in Fuego. So that dude shows back up again. Young MC Gainey shows back up again in that one.
For anybody who's wanted to see MC Gainey and some man-on-man.
It doesn't happen in Pennies from Heaven, but it definitely happens here. But we were talking before we even started recording, it's like, why are we having such a hard time finding these movies? I mean, all of these movies are fantastic. And Heather, you said, if Joe Sarno can get these wonderful editions, why not Armando Bo? It would be fantastic to have a collection of these movies, because they just are super entertaining, and so many are hard to find without subtitles or dubbing.
I wonder if part of it too is that, with films that were often kind of promoted and pushed as exploitation in the States, that's already kind of an uphill battle for preservation, because nobody considered that art. I mean, regular big budget Hollywood films of the past, people didn't think in terms of preserving for a long time, much less something that was viewed as, like throwaway entertainment. But also you made the point, Mike, to me in that discussion that, Sarno's American too. So that probably helps. And he has a bit of a cult following, and has for a long time. He also had a pretty long career in the States, because he went into hardcore too. So I don't know if that helped as far as him having kind of a reputation as a filmmaker in the States more than Armando Bo did. I don't know. There's got to be several factors, I imagine. Distribution's probably a big one, but also just, it's always kind of an uphill battle for people, I think, preserving films that aren't, that weren't really respected when they came out. I'm kind of surprised, though, that there hasn't been any releases, though, at least from Europe. Because it seems like, when Sarli, when she was still alive, she got invited to all these film festivals over in Europe. Different places in Europe to celebrate, and their film and Armando's work in particular getting kind of a resurgence and more respect. Who knows? It always seems kind of like a mystery why some things get out and some things don't.
I'm also surprised that there isn't more of a revival of Bo, because his grandson is out there making movies and winning Oscars. He was one of the co-writers of Birdman a few years ago. So if you go out and type in Armando Bo in a search engine, you are going to come up with all kinds of things, especially one called The Last Elvis that he made in 2012. And then, he was a writer on Birdman. So we had he was up at the podium accepting his Oscar a few years ago, if memory serves.
I had no idea.
Bo had, so the original the original Armando Bo had his son that was in some of the movies with them, and then I don't think the grandson ever was in any of his movies, but he's been out there doing his thing for all these years. So you would think maybe he would want to say, let's go ahead and take Grandpa's films and restore them.
Or he may be totally embarrassed by them. Who knows? And I didn't realize he has the same name, Armando Bo. Oh, wow. Who knew? You knew, Mike. You knew.
I only lucked into it because I kept saying, why is Birdman coming up when I'm doing these searches for articles?
Bewitched is one I definitely want to see just because of the horror aspect. But the other one I'm interested in seems like it could be, not officially, a sequel to Fuego. But it's definitely connected thematically. It's called Fever from 1971. she basically equates this horse. She gets turned on by horses, basically. She lives on a ranch and watches the horses copulate, and it turns her on. She touches herself, thinking of horse penis, and there's like this intercut between horses' penises and her touching herself. And I'm sure that wouldn't play wonderfully in the States, but it's kind of out there, and goes kind of. I think it does. It takes Fuego like one step further.
Boy, no, talk about though. I mean, that's a few years before Borovchik's Lebet, so that's kind of interesting. Which I love Lebet. That's an awesome movie. But wow, yeah, that's hopefully, like, Mike, you doing this podcast, I always view as anything that any of us do and put out there is like planting a seed. So hopefully this is planting a seed for maybe more resurgence. Maybe an enterprising DVD Blu-ray company getting their mitts on some prints. Yes. And we also know the 3 people you guys could have on your supplements. Just saying.
Well, and Rod, you mentioned the documentary about them as well, and I think there were a couple docs about them. But yeah, the one that actually got a little bit of notice was, what was it, Flesh on Flesh or Carne on Carne? Where's that DVD? I would love to have that, as far as here's a story of what was happening in Argentinian cinema at the time, and look through the lens of Armando Bo. But yeah, let's see that one with subtitles, because the way that you and I watched it, as far as YouTube Translate, left a lot to be desired.
Oh yeah, those subtitles are terrible. I think they even translated the title of the movie as Meat Over Meat, which I guess, but yeah, Carne sobre Carne, Flesh on Flesh, the intimacies of Isabel Sarli.
Yeah, I would love to see that. And I want to say that there are plenty of interviews with her. Heather, you mentioned that there are a lot of Q&As with her in Europe. As far as I remember, she spoke really good English. She actually went to school for typing and worked at a British consulate, if memory serves. So she knew how to speak English, and so I'm sure there are more English interviews with her out there as well, because when she and Waters, they've been interviewed together, and she spoke English on those.
It's interesting if you look at her IMDb page, where she has appeared as herself. The Merv Griffin Show, she apparently was on in 1969 alongside Jackie Mason.
Oh my God.
I would love to see that. I would love to see it. And it shows she's also on the Argentinian exploitation segment of the Mondo Macabro supplements that are on some of those discs of theirs where they concentrate on one country or another. She is interviewed on one of those as well.
Yeah, she just passed away last year, if memory serves. So she had a nice, lifelong career. And there was, plenty of information about her. So it's not like we're talking about some starlet from the 1930s, where you can't see interviews with them, where you can't find information about them. But it is difficult to put your hands on stuff. And just finding actual articles written about Sarli and Armando Bo were pretty difficult, unless you were looking in like the zine world and just seeing people that were coming to these movies for the first time and just being like, oh my God, you have to see this, which is our reaction exactly.
It looks like the last thing she was interviewed for was a documentary last year called Zombies in the Sugarcane Field, about an Argentinian zombie film before Night of the Living Dead. She was not, doesn't appear that she was in that movie, but for some reason she is interviewed in it.
I read one article which kept trying to conflate her career with the career of Eva Perón or Eva Duarte at the time, and just that they were rivals. And then I was looking up their ages, and I'm like, well, actually, Eva was 20 years older than Isabel. I don't think that they're running in the same circles.
No, I was about to say the timeline doesn't...
No, it doesn't jive at all. No.
Well, one thing I noticed, I was just curious, like, to get your guys' input on is, I was trying to think of other films of this genre that have sort of a blatantly Catholic kind of guilt angle with. And because the only one that came to my mind directly was, for all you Timothy Carey fans out there, like when his film Bayou was re-released as Poor White Trash, there was extra footage shot to make it more titillating. And part of that footage was the lead character gets viciously raped in the mud and ends up going to church and praying. Like, you see lots of religious statues. It's very ominous feeling. Or at least ominous for those of us who don't like church, I guess. But I was trying to think of other films. I mean, there are definitely other Catholic filmmakers in sexploitation, but I couldn't really think of a lot of films that had that blatant angle, but I may be missing some big ones. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I can't think of any offhand.
Yeah, I feel like I just don't know enough about the genre to even begin to speak to it. Because, like, I'm thinking of other Catholic countries and maybe what their exploitation films were like, and if they had that same innate guilt to it. It's interesting that it's an American film. You're talking about Bayou/Poor White Trash that put that in there because, I mean, obviously we have a lot of guilty religious people around here. Most of them are going to get away with a lot of crimes, but we don't have that as part of our, it's not a thread that is wound as tight with our tapestry as, say, like a Spain or a Poland or in Argentina or even, I think, Brazil as well, or Mexico.
Right. Well, and that explains why you don't really, when you think of, like, say, because maybe the closest thing is in the 70s, you had, like, the nunsploitation subgenre, but that was pretty much exclusively European, or in some, I think there's some from Latin America too, but like not really America. Also, the Poor White Trash edit, what's kind of hilarious about that footage spliced in is the scene right after her praying after being raped is the character that supposedly we just saw get raped sees Ulysses, who supposedly is the character that just raped her. Obviously, it's not the same actors. And he's all like, Marie, comment allez-vous, baby?
Oh, Jesus.
and she just looks irritated with them. Like, she doesn't look scared or pissed. She's just like, what do you want, Ulysses? Like, it's so... It just always makes me laugh. Like, this is why you gotta love exploitation tactics with cinema. It's just some of the additions just become Dada almost.
They have detorned the film.
The Poor White Trash edit, they do some editing tweaking with the infamous Cajun dance scene with Timothy Carey, and they actually make it longer.
Oh, thank you. Good.
Which makes so it's my favorite edit just for that. Timothy Carey dancing is always a gift from God to you, so.
Oh, nothing beats him in World's Greatest Sinner, though.
Oh, I know. Where's the criterion of that? Like,
I know.
Wes Anderson. I want Timothy Carey.
Totally agree. I'm sure Romeo's holding out for some good deals, though.
Yeah. Get our fingers crossed, 2020. I mean, this could be the year.
All right, let's go ahead and take another break and play a preview for next week's show.
רבותיי, אנחנו ממשיכים בחקירת האל.
גורלו של רוב השלם נתון בידיו של איש לא נורמלי. חולה נפש. חולה נפש. הוא לא בא מהעירייה, הוא בא מבית משוגעים. הוא ישן עם הקופרסור שלו, הוא אוכל איתו, הוא נשוי לו. טרר תקפום, טרר תקפום.
רבותיי, לא להפריע לסדר הציבור. הציבור? אני משלם מיסים. אני הבוס שלך. הבוס שלי הוא ניצב משנה עקיבא לבקוביץ'. מה תתחצף?
That's right. We'll be back next week with a look at Ephraim Kishan's The Big Dig. Until then, I want to thank this week's co-host, Rod and Heather. Rod, what has been keeping you busy?
I have been through quite a year transformatively in life, but I'm getting back to writing more reviews regularly at flickattack.com. Also working on reviews for Film International every now and then, and due out in 2020, sometime later this year, I have an essay in a book about David Fincher's Zodiac that's coming out. But my chapter is on a Zodiac killer, the 1971 exploitation film. So that'll be out sometime this year, but that's kind of my life at the moment.
I normally wouldn't buy that book because I'm not familiar with the Fincher version, but knowing that you, Rod, are writing about the 1970 film, which I am familiar with because of course I am, I want this book in my life right now. That is awesome. I can't wait to read that. The
whole book covers, it's mostly on Fincher is what the editor has told me, but there's a section on pre-Fincher Zodiac films, and that I got assigned to do the one on Zodiac Killer. Interviewed Tom Hansen, and it should be great.
That is so cool. That makes me happy. I live in a world where that exists.
And Heather, when you're not out there getting nominated for Rondos, what are you doing?
Mike, thank you for bringing that up. The Rondos. Well, for all you music lovers and white punks on dope, part 3 of my ongoing article miniseries On the Tubes is live over at diabolicmagazine.com. This time around, I explore the band's underrated third album, Now. And, speaking of article series, I just finished the newest installment of The Rocket Files, my personal tribute and deep dive into the career of the late, great Charles Rocket. So keep your eyes peeled over at mondoheather.com for this and other benign goodies.
Those are great. Those Rocket articles, I have to hand it to you. Those are great.
Oh my God, thank you.
He is, I've always been, I don't know if fan is the right word, but I've just always been intrigued since I saw him on SNL in the day, that one year. And he'd popped up here and there, but you really do an excellent job with that.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me because it's obviously it's a big work of love, and also just kind of like delving into his aspects of his career, because this piece that's going to be going live on the site here probably actually later today or tomorrow is about, he was on this New York public access show called TV Party, which was this super cool, Glenn O'Brien hosted it, and they'd have people like Chris Stein and Debbie Harry, Jean-Michel Basquiat, Kathy Acker was in the audience of the particular episode I'm reviewing, and Charles was semi-regular on this, and this was the time period right after he'd gotten fired from SNL. That's the thing, a lot of people don't really realize his just ties to the art world and the post-punk world, and just such a cool guy. It's definitely, I'm hoping to kind of delve more. I've only ever found one interview with Charles Rocket online, and it's just a quote from him from an issue of People magazine, and I just think that's so weird because Rocket did so much. He had a pretty steady career,
and such a tragic end to his life.
But no, thank you so much. I definitely, that makes me very happy to hear. So hopefully kind of keep the preservation flame going for the man.
Well, thank you again, guys, for being on the show. Thanks to everybody for listening. Please head on over to the website, projectionboothpodcast.com, where you can find out more about today's episode. You'll also find a link over to Patreon, where you can make a donation to the show. Every donation we get helps the Projection Booth take over the world.
Painted up your lips and rolled and curled your tinted hair. are you contemplating going out somewhere? The shadow on the wall tells me the sun is going down. Oh, Ruby, don't take your love to town. It wasn't me that started that old crazy Asian war, but I was proud to go and do my patriotic chore. And yes, it's true that I'm not the man I used to be. Oh, I still need some company. It's hard to love a man whose legs are bent and paralyzed. And the wants and the needs of a woman your age, Ruby, I realize. But it won't be long, I've heard them say, until I'm not around. Take your love to town. She's leaving now, 'cause I just heard the slamming of the door. The way I know I've heard it slam 100 times before. And if I could move, I'd get my gun and put her in the ground. Take your love to town. Oh, for God's sakes, turn around.
If you enjoy this show and want more people to know about it, head on over to iTunes, leave a comment, and rate it 5 stars. Make sure you like and share us on Facebook, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Just search for Christopher Media. Thank you in advance for supporting Christopher Media by clicking on the PayPal button and by clicking through to all the sponsors who support ChristopherMedia.net. Most importantly, we would like to take the time to extend an extra special thanks to you. Christopher Media could not exist without your support. Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net, and thank you for listening. Christopher Media. Let's make some noise.